One of the arguments I've heard is that, religions go through stages. So Judaism's been around longer, and so it's at one stage, and Christianity's at another stage, and Islam is at another stage. And I don't really know much about that myself. Can you talk about that?
What you mean is that religions evolve and change. Well, see, the problem there is that religion usually will claim that it has come down in an established form for all time, and that whatever its present form is, that is the exact form which was intended originally, and that no evolution of the religion whatsoever can have taken place. History usually undermines that idea and demonstrates that religions do change. Religious orthodoxies are usually afraid to admit that, because if they do, they are afraid that will call into question the central tenets of the religion, because one might then assume that they had evolved. And in fact, you will find that polemicists from outside each of the religions will polemicize about the other religions and accuse them of various types of falsification and so on in their early phases that are debatable and that they don't admit to. I would say that the solution to that is to recognize that, yes, religions evolve. The religions do evolve somewhat. And even if a religion has scriptures that were laid down a very long time ago, and about which we can be fairly certain have been transmitted from a very early date honestly, because even if we said that the Christian Gospels contain interpolations and fabrications, well, at what date could that would that have had to have ceased? Well, by the time that there are attested manuscripts of them. So if there were changes, it couldn't have happened over a very long period. In other words, the Christian Gospels as they now stand must be stable for at least 1,800 years by everyone's agreement, and have had no interpolations in that period, even though before that some people may debate about it. So therefore you would have, anyway, the solidification of scriptures. And when the scriptures are solidified, that would give the appearance, if we have a thought of literalism, that then there wouldn't be any evolution. But actually, of course, interpretation is always evolving. It's in continuous flux. It's constantly changing. And so it must, and so it should. And look what the religions did with the cosmology of Genesis cosmology, which is shared by the Quran more or less, although not with the same amount of detail, which is the idea that the sky is a firmament with emphasis on the word firm, meaning a fixed dome through which either the stars shine through holes in the sky from the light of the waters of creation above the firmament, or else they are stuck on the firmament as flecks, which are all equidistant from where we're at, and so on. And then the whole of it sits on a flat earth, which is on the back of the ultimate beast, the behemoth, which swims through the waters of creation, either being a gigantic sea monster or a turtle or something. And although that's not all specified in any of the scriptures we're talking about quite, but it seems that the religions have managed to go through a process of reinterpretation where they were able to dump the old interpretation and adopt one now in consonance with present-day cosmology that didn't cause that much turmoil or difficulty. So that's a big evolution right there. But if you had meant by your comment they evolve through certain stages, like they have youth and middle age and old age, or something, I mean, that I would think would be arbitrary categories. And there's also this concept, for example, of invidious comparisons that we are dynamic, you are static. And so you can find, for example, the Christians will say, Judaism was full of vitality until the Old Testament was closed, and then after that, it just became static and useless. And so Judaism was a valid religion up till Christ came, and then it was invalidated, and the Jews should all become Christians, or something like that. And, it's just not true that it was static. I mean, that's just not the case. It remained very dynamic, and it was filled with renewal in every century. And so was Catholicism, and so is Islam. Every one of the religions has to be renewed constantly, or it will perish if there's not a continuous religious renewal. That's why there's a hadith which says that every 100 years a renewer comes to Islam. The mujaddid comes and renews the religion. And so sometimes people have made up lists of people whom they think were the mujaddids of the age and so on.